So the last speaker of the morning is Dr. David Nowak, whose groundbreaking work on U4 and modeling iTreat led directly to lasting change in New York City, as I mentioned earlier, enabled us to justify the reforestation of New York City, and Dr. Nowak continues to do groundbreaking work, so please welcome him.
Thanks, Bram, and good morning. It's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. I've been asked to talk about iTreat. And iTreat is a public domain free model to assess ecosystem services, but it focuses mainly on trees and forests. The reason the U.S. Forest Service built this with many partners, and the newest version just came out this past week. It's our sixth release, sixth version. It's called iTreat 2014. We're starting to name it by year now. The goal of this model is to get people to measure vegetation and to understand the services provided by the vegetation, from the scale of what is my tree in my backyard doing to what is all the forests in my region doing. And by doing that, if we understand what our trees individually do and what the forest does, maybe we can have better management decisions to have better forests in the future, healthy forests that are providing more optimal services. So we're trying to build this tool to be as easy to use as possible and free in the public domain. So I want to talk about that today. This is the main construct behind the model. This is the key information when you talk about limitations to the model. There are three parts to it. It's understanding the structure, the function, and the value. What a lot of people have been talking about this morning is we try to understand the value. What is this cost benefit? What is it worth to us? In order to understand the value, we have to step back and understand what are we trying to value, the various services, and in terms of forestry, what is that tied to? It ties back to the structure. And this is key. Structure is the key to what this model is about. What this model tries to do is take you from the measurement of structure. Now, what structure is what you see about the forest. How many trees do you have? What is the size of the tree? How big is what we're trying to get as leaf surface area. How many leaves does it have? That's the key driver of the functions. What's the position of the tree? So if I have a maple tree in my backyard versus an oak tree, I'm going to get different functions. If I move the tree to a different side of the building, I'm going to get different functions. So the question is, we as managers in society, we manipulate structure. We determine how many trees in many ways, what tree I'm going to plant, where I'm going to plant it. That determines these various services that we'll talk about, and that has value to society. So the point is, if we want to optimize the value to society, we have to step back and understand what structure should that be. Where should the trees be located? How many trees should they be in what species? And that's the guise of this model, is to take you through this. We start with structure. We estimate the functions, and then we have the various values to society. The most accurate part of the model is the structure, because that's what we measure, hopefully. I can see that tree, I can measure, I can say it's a red oak, and I can see it's 30 inches diameter, 60 feet tall, I can take measurements about it. Where we get inherent uncertainties come in is now we talk about that tree and its environment, what are its services, so there's a step of modeling to do that, and then beyond that, even more uncertainties, what's the value? So if this tree stores 1 ton of carbon, what's it worth to society? So what this model tries to do is get people to measure about their own local environment, to estimate the structure, and then we value or determine the functions and value those functions. First step is structure. There's two ways to get at structure: top down or bottom up. You can fly over with an airplane, look from the air, and produce satellite maps. The picture here on the left-hand side is a high-resolution map. So Morgan Grove and Jarlath and Neil Dunn are making UTC maps, high-resolution cover maps. National Land Cover has 30-meter tree cover maps for the United States, which tells you the distribution of cover. A new National Land Cover map is supposed to be coming out in March to look at the new tree cover. That gets you information from the top down. What iTreat tries to do is combine that with bottom up. There's only certain things, information that you can get from the top down versus bottom up. If I look from the air, I can tell the distribution of cover, which is very important in spaces available to plant trees. But in terms of management, I also need to know what's the species, what's the health, what's the size. Because what happens through time is this forest is going to change, it's going to grow. In order to understand the growth, we have to understand the diameter distribution in the species. So what we're trying to do is get at this information about the structure of the forest. To help with this, there's a guide that's on the table if you leave the conference room here, but also if you go to Tree Search, Google Tree Search, you can get it there. It's a guide for assessing urban forests, and that compares how do you measure the differences between top-down measurements and bottom-up. If you wanted more information, it's out there. But that's the core measurements that start the model is, what is my forest? So if I'm in my backyard, where am I located? I have a certain structure. If I go to New York City, I'm going to have a different structure. That's the foundation to the model. You feed that data into the model, and what iTreat basically is a series of free tools to help you assess these services in hopefully in an easy and rapid fashion. And we have a series of partners. You can see them on the bottom. It's a public-private partnership to help get these tools out for people to use. And what I'd like to do is go through some of these tools. What we're trying to look at is we have the various tools to estimate. These are the functions that we're looking at here on the slides. The yellow ones, building energy use, air quality improvement, water quality improvement, greenhouse gas reduction, and oxygen, are already in the model. It's basically directly calculated off of the structure of the forest. The green or the orange ones are the ones we're working on right now. Cooler air temperatures, socioeconomic effects, UV radiation reduction, wildlife habitat, human comfort, insect biodiversity, and the various products. The model keeps evolving each year. Again, it's all tied to the structure. So if I have a different structure, I'm going to have different air quality improvement. If I have a different structure, I might have different wildlife habitat. The key is that we manipulate the structure. So now we're moving towards various ecosystem service. And the key is, we talked about earlier this morning about trying to do cost-benefit analysis. Many of these, there are many other services that we can't even estimate right now. The one in the white there is aesthetics. We know that service is provided. How do we value that, or quantify aesthetics, and what's the value to society? So I think no matter what we do in terms of cost-benefit analysis with models, we're always missing something. And can we truly value what these services are? And how costly is it to come up with some of the valuation? So some of these things we have dollar values on, some of them that we don't, and we basically use economic literature to determine the values, such as if it's a ton of pollution removed, what's the value per ton, either in terms of health impacts or ecosystem impacts. So our theory on the model is, if you don't like the multiplier that we use, we're straight up about it. You can use your own multiplier if you have local values that can be used. The model strength is trying to estimate what the services are, gallons of water, tons of pollution. The model's been out since 2006. The newest version just came out this past week. We've had over 12,000 users downloaded worldwide, another 10,000 web tool users. The model will run in the United States, Canada, and Australia right now automatically. The model will run anywhere in the world, but it takes some data manipulation to fix the data structures, because if you go to different countries, their input formats, such as pollution data, differ from the US, so there's conversion problems. So let me go through briefly what these tools do. There are 3 core programs. This involves field measurements, and this is the bottom-up approach. We have iTreat Eco, iTreat Streets, and iTreat Design. And there's difference of scales on this. Eco is the core engine that calculates. You put a tree into that model, it takes the local pollution data, the local weather systems, and simulates what that tree does. That's the core engine. Streets is another model that focuses just on street tree populations. And Design is a model that tries to put that same type of work on Google Maps, where you can sketch your landscape. So what we have here is Eco and Streets. Again, Eco works anywhere, any scale. Streets works just for street tree populations. You put the data in, it estimates your structure. You can do inventories, or you can do sampling. So if I'm doing New York City, I'm not going to count every tree in the city. If I'm doing the street trees, I might. So I do an inventory. If I have 1 million street trees, and I put them all in the model, my answer will be 1 million. If I'm doing the whole city, we statistically sample by grabbing samples, and you may only put 1,000 trees in the model, statistically estimate 5 million trees in the city. That's the difference in the model, but it tells you structural information. How many trees do you have? What's the leaf surface area? What's the biomass? What's the species composition, diversity? Things that you directly measure. Then it brings in the weather and pollution data and estimates the functions you can see there that we just talked about. Energy conservation, pollution removal, carbon, rainfall interception and runoff reduction, volatile organic compound emissions, and human health impacts. And it ascribes a value to those. We also do management risks. So if emerald ash borer comes into the area, what proportion of your forest is at risk to these various insects and diseases? Tree health and exotic invasive species. So that's the core calculator, if you will. The model is designed to take you easily from the beginning to the end. You can take a mobile device and be on your smartphone, collect the data, send it right to the computer. It'll produce all the reports for you, the graphs and tables, and give you a standard report, which then you can take and customize as you want. It's designed to take you right from the beginning to the end. How does it work? There are various two main databases that drive the model. There's a species database, which has about 6,400 species in right now. which works very well in the United States, but as we found, we went to Brazil. Brazil alone has 7,500 species. So they're all in Portuguese, and we don't know what they are. But the key to that is what the species database holds is information about the species. What genus is it from, what family, what's the attributes? Is it bigger, small, fast, or slow growing? So we need to build that species database up. It's pretty much built up for the United States, so it'll work fine here. There's also a location database. Where are you? If I run the model in New York City, it grabs New York's information. Its lat and longitude, its weather system, its pollution. If I go to Los Angeles, I have to grab that system. So it's all preloaded into the modeling system. What the user's required to do is input their own field data. We don't know what you have in New York or Los Angeles or where you are. You have to go make a measurement, whether it be from the satellites or from the field data. And then what it does, it loads into iTreat, does the calculations and outcomes tables and charts and reports that you can take and then customize for your area. So that's the ECO core program, similar to Streets. Design is our attempt to get at working with landscape architects, homeowners, school kids, people that work at fine scale issues. In this case, you go onto Google Maps and do the exact same thing. You can type in your house address, your house will pop up on the map, you can sketch your building and start placing trees around it, either existing trees or future trees that you might want to plant, and it'll estimate the services for that fine scale. The difference is you're not going to do this. You're not going to sketch all of New York City by putting every tree in, but for site scale designs, when I start moving trees, I start getting different answers. If I plant a tree to the south side of the building, I'm going to have a different answer than if I go to the north. So we're trying to get at landscape designs and engaging kids in schools to start looking at things that are relevant to them at the scale that's relevant to them. Same type of mathematics and calculations, but it is at the finer scale. It'll estimate benefits for the trees, future benefits, and actually back calculate now in the new version how many benefits you've accrued to date given the size of the tree that you put in. So we're just trying to engage people with making measurements and being involved in ecosystem services. So those are the core programs that take measurements, either eco, streets, or design. The top-down approach, we have iTreat View, which currently uses national land cover data, and we have iTreat Canopy, which is a photo interpretation program. View basically loads in national land cover maps and tries to take average data to give you quick estimates of services. In this case, this is Washington, D.C. Where's your tree cover? Where's your impervious cover? And what are some of the basic services mapped out? View is going to convert by next year to what's called iTreat Landscape, which will allow you to bring in the UTC maps that we talked about, those high-resolution cover maps, and make more sophisticated analysis. So our big push now in the mapping services is to bring in these high-resolution maps to make more spatially refined decisions. Canopy is probably our most popular tool worldwide because it'll work anywhere in the world. It's a photo interpretation tool. If I want to know the cover, tree cover or impervious cover, pretty much anywhere in the globe that has Google imagery that's high resolution, I can get within a 2% estimate within a day using this tool. It's basically just random sampling of points on your computer system, and you call what that point fell on. So you can see in the lower image there, that little crosshair falling on the tree. You classify that as a tree. It randomly pulls up points quite rapidly, and you can get statistical estimates. The difference is between that and View. View has a map of cover. You know where the cover is. In this case, I don't know. I statistically estimate. I can do a park. I can do a city. I can do a state. You basically sketch your area, and it'll start putting points down. You get a statistical estimate of what your percent and number of hectares or acres of cover that you would have in your area. So it's very simple to use. It doesn't map it out, but it gives you the estimate of how much you have in any geography that you want to put in. Last two are specialized utilities. Species Selector. The question here we're trying to ask as a database of trees is, it asks you a series of ecosystem services. You rate from 0 to 10 what you would like, what service back from your area. So if I'm looking at air pollution, I'd rate that 10. Maybe the other one's at 0. It basically will sort the database from where you are. If you put your city in, it'll tell you the recommended species for that service that you want back. What we're trying to get away from is selecting tree just based on color, but based on function. If I'm trying to combat carbon or water, I might choose a different species than if I'm trying to combat air. So it's trying to get at the species selections. It's a very simple tool. Truthfully, you can go up and within less than a minute get an answer if you just answer the questions. So that's the species program. The last one is iTreat Hydro. This is the most complicated program. This actually simulates the stream flow on an hourly basis based on changes in tree and impervious cover within a watershed. The new version that just came out does not require a watershed. The old version prior to last week required you, it actually calibrates on a gauging station so you can simulate flow. But you need digital elevation map. It's one of the more complicated models to use because it actually simulates flow at the gauging station and basically illustrates if you added more cover, impervious cover or tree cover, or decreased them, what happens to the change in flow and water quality. So where are we headed? We have the basic tools that are out there now. Our main push is to work on either design, and this new program called Landscape. The design, again, links to Google Maps. Tiling services to that. Landscape links to these high-resolution cover maps. The reason we're working on this is to answer the question of the where question. All right, so we know why or what's happening. We know the services. Now the question is where, if I'm going to optimize the forest, where should I plant these trees? So we're working on optimization routines. So if you have these maps and these ecosystem services that say, here's the best impacts of I plant trees here for water, pollution, wildlife habitat, there's multiple services that can be provided. If you want to optimize it, it's not up to what we have to ask is the users. What's of most concern to your region? And try to make the decisions of space available or areas that have trees that need to be protected to sustain these services. So the landscaping model is trying to look at the where question. The species recommendation model, we're updating it. We're adding climate change information and pests into that, trying to look at risk to insects and diseases, risk to future climate change, what species will do better 50 years in the future. Now is trying to answer the question of the what. If I know where to plant, it also goes what species should I plant, not only for ecosystem services, but also the best tree for ecosystem service might not survive 50 years from now. So if the best tree for services is ash, it might not be a smart idea to plant ash trees because of the risk associated with emerald ash borer. So we're trying to get at the where and the what questions. The schematic for iTreat landscape is very similar to the same one for eco, except for we moved in and bringing in the tree cover maps, and it allows you to map the ecosystem services. That's the main concept, running the same model but putting it on a map basis, integrating the field data with the map data. Various models that we're working on right now, air temperature modeling, to look at the heat island effects, which is a big ecosystem service because temperatures impact a lot of other ecosystem services. And Susanna Lehrman from the University of Massachusetts just finished up a wildlife habitat model for us, for birds, not dogs. The last thing we're working on is forecast, and this is important. This is a time series model. Forests are not static. The decisions we make today, what we plant, have a big impact 30 to 50 years down the road. What the forecast model is doing, taking the data and simulating out to the future. So I have these static maps, I have this static data set. It's going to change through time. It's going to change from natural regeneration and natural tree growth, but it's also going to change based on what managers are doing to the system. So what it does, the key question we're trying to answer with the forecast model is, if a city sets a goal of a certain amount of canopy cover at a certain point in the future, and we know trees are going to die at a certain rate, and we know trees are going to grow, the question is how many trees does the city have to bring in to reach that goal? It's like putting money in a bank account. If I know I have $100 in my account right now and I want to get it to $200, and if I know my interest rate and how much I'm withdrawing monthly, the question is how much do I have to deposit to get there? The same concept with forests. If I have a certain amount of green out there, and I know trees are going to die, which is the withdrawal rate, I know the trees are going to grow, which is the interest rate, I can back calculate how much has to come in annually. And that's what the concept of the model is at each land use scale, forests versus residential lands. How many plants do we have to plant in cities to reach our goal? Again, it's dependent on what the users are setting as their goal. And what we found in doing this model, which is very interesting from our point of view of how we sometimes miss things in modeling, is that you don't have to plant your way out of this forest. We can back calculate how many trees have to come in. It doesn't mean you have to plant them. So the key question in determining what the future is, how much is nature doing? Natural regeneration. Trees are coming in all the time. So if you allow natural regeneration to come in, it might forestall or limit the need of how many trees you have to plant. And that's what we're trying to look at from long-term modeling data sets, is what's nature contributing in different areas. So that if we know that, let's say, I'm making this up, I need 10,000 trees a year, and I know nature's giving me 8,000 trees a year, the difference is what humans have to make up to reach that goal. And it changes through time as trees grow and die. And that's what we're trying to do. We're bringing in climate change projections, the new future scenarios of how it's going to get in New York City warmer and wetter. What's the implication for that for services? And also development scenarios from ICLIS development maps. What's likely the future going to be, and how is that going to impact ecosystem services? So summary slide right here. You have ECO as the core program. If you go to online mapping tools, take the top path and go into Google Maps, Google Maps, you go to iTreat Design. Small scale, local scale analysis. If you move to land cover maps and bring in projected scenarios, you go to iTreat Landscape, which is a cover map-based regional scale model. And in between both of those is iTreat Forecast, which allows both of those to simulate. You can grow trees in design. You can grow trees in landscape to try and simulate the future. The reason we do this is we're trying to understand what do I have to do today to have a better forest for the next generation of people. And that's the whole concept behind this model, to get people to measure data about the forests. So thank you very much for your time.
We have time for 2 questions. Any questions for David? Colleen, right behind you.
Hi, does your model, in the future, or do you have any intention to calculate the interference with utility infrastructure, either through root spread or canopy or tree failure, overhead barriers, things like that?
Oh, we've talked about that. That would be in design at the fine scale. Unless you had a digital database of all the, and you might be able to do it through the UTC maps if you knew where all the infrastructure conflicts were. But in design, you could sketch out where the wires are, and that's where you would link the species database to the design. So it's not only if you're going to plant a tree and you only have an overhead wire at 40 feet, you might want to select.
You have to, have a shorter growing tree or
right,
something like that.
Right, so linking in there. But in essence, if you had to do that in design, the user would have to sketch the. Basically, it's like Google SketchUp. You can sketch your landscape. You can put the wires in, and they would make decisions. That's what we're working on in design.
Okay, cool. Great.
Colleen in the back.
Do you have any examples of cities using iTree as a city or with the community to encourage urban forestry projects?
Oh, wow, yeah. New York is one. Bram talked about that. We've done many cities. Chris just did Hartford, New Haven. We just did Chicago. Chicago not only did the city, they did the whole 9 counties around the metropolitan area. We're working with Kansas City. They're doing a metro analysis. Most of our work is working with the communities because we don't collect the data. We'll help set up the data collection points and do the analysis. So it's a lot of times working with communities. Canada has many. The whole Toronto metro region has done that in trying to involve people, either volunteer data collectors or professional, usually students they hire with it. And Casper, there's a lot of good examples of how. The thing is, what we say in our point, from the Forest Service point of view, or from iTree's point of view, is we can only take it so far. You get the report. What is done with it at the scale is what New York City is doing to others. It's not the model that's making the difference. The model is providing information to make the difference. At that stage, someone locally has to run with that data. And if you're not going to, that's why we partner with cities, so that we have a group that's vested in wanting to do something with it. To make calculations in and of themselves is pretty meaningless, but have someone who can use that information to make a change is why it's important. So there are many, you can look on our website, there's many communities that we've done, literally probably over 100 that have run this model in different ways. All right, thank you.
Tell them to go to lunch.